If you're into health and wellness and you live on planet Earth, chances are you've heard the expression, the gut is the root of disease. It sounds like such a progressive idea. We hear it all the time in alternative healthcare. I'm here to tell you the gut is not the root cause of disease. Want to learn why this idea is flawed? What is actually the root cause of disease and what role the gut plays? Keep watching. Hi, I'm Erica Herman. Join me as I go deep investigating all things holistic health for intelligent people who are sick of BS, all informed by my 2 decades of research, consulting, and even being a best-selling author. In reality, the gut is downstream. It is a symptom of the root causes of disease. And oftentimes, those causes are just that, plural. There are more than one. There has to be some kind of an antagonist to damage the gut. When the gut gets damaged, tight junctions in the gut barrier are loosened, allowing food particles and toxins to enter circulation in the blood where they shouldn't be, creating an immune inflammatory response. Most people in the 21st century have some degree of a leaky gut. But here's a shocker. The root cause antagonists are not a microbial imbalance. We hear that a lot, right? How microbial imbalances are causes of gut issues. In some cases, you're told taking probiotics can help the microbial imbalance. And they might, or they might not, and can sometimes create more problems, which is another video. But that doesn't change the reality that microbial imbalance is triggered by something else. It's not causal. So what are the root causes of a damaged gut? There are multiple factors, and like I said, oftentimes the root causes are plural, more than one. Some of these are endogenous, from within. Some of them are exogenous, from without. There are environmental root causes, including 6 categories. And after these environmental root causes, there are 6 other root causes. So of the environmental root causes, the first is toxic metals. This applies to nearly everyone. Toxic metals include, but are not limited to, mercury, aluminum, arsenic, lead, and cadmium. Copper can also be considered a toxic metal, but it depends what its ratio to other minerals is and whether that copper is bioavailable or not. Number 2 of environmental root causes is industrial toxins. An array of chemicals falls under this umbrella, including but not limited to BPA, microplastics, pesticides and herbicides, bromine, chlorine, benzene, etc. Exposure is common. These are exogenous, from without, exogenous toxins. The third category of environmental root causes is biotoxins, like mycotoxins, which are the non-living byproduct of various kinds of molds. Number 4 of environmental root causes is non-native EMFs. This applies to nearly everyone. Numbers 5 and 6 of the environmental root causes includes insufficient basics like sunlight exposure and grounding. So I'll explain for number 5, light exposure dysregulation. Think too much blue light at the wrong time, not enough properly timed exposure to infrared, near infrared, and also ultraviolet light. Also, not enough grounding, which is number 6 in this list. That's another term for walking barefoot on the earth because the earth is one giant free radical scavenger. So that's the category of environmental factors, environmental root causes. These include toxic metals, industrial toxins, biotoxins, non-native EMFs, light exposure dysregulation, and insufficient grounding. Other categories outside of the environmental root causes include things like endogenous toxins, so toxins that are from within. So this would be issues where maybe we're not breaking down our own hormones because there's some impairment in how these hormones are metabolized, because hormones have to be metabolized through a multi-stage detoxification process that goes well beyond just what you poop out. Toxins of any sort, whether endogenous or exogenous, can back up in the liver and gallbladder and slow bile flow, creating a cascade of health issues. When it comes to toxins, exogenous or endogenous, keep in mind that in the complex metabolic detoxification processes your body so wisely uses to break down toxins, toxins can be made even more toxic in that process of breaking them down for safe elimination. And because sometimes one or more of those detoxification stages may not be working properly, our bodies are then burdened with compounds that are even more toxic than were initially present. Chronic stress and unprocessed trauma. I'm talking about chronic emotional, psychological, and lifestyle stress, which affects most people. But chronic stress is becoming increasingly common in this day and age. Also, by unprocessed trauma, I mean unprocessed cognitively and somatically. Soma means body, right? The latter, somatic processing, is most often neglected. So we're talking a body-based nervous system kind of processing. Chronic stress and trauma can dysregulate the vagus nerve, which connects your gut to your brain, and it can activate the cell danger response, leading to a cascade of physical and health effects, including impaired detoxification. Oftentimes, there's more than one root cause for gut damage, and stress and unprocessed trauma are often major ones. Also, keep in mind that toxins can be stressors or traumatic, and they can dysregulate the nervous and limbic system, thereby creating a vicious cycle that just snowballs. Another root cause is structural issues like hypermobility, injury, trauma, surgery, dental or jaw cavitations, congenital birth defects. The list goes on. Another root cause can be pharmaceuticals, as well as implants. Implants of any kind where non-native materials are implanted into the body. And diet. This includes food selection, food quality, and sensitivities or reactivities or allergies. For the lucky few in the 21st century, diet is the sole root cause of gut damage, and it can be corrected simply by integrating or omitting various foods. Also, another root cause is jabs. I'm using the street jargon here. If you know, you know. Now, I'll quickly touch on a category many expect would be listed as root causes: microbes and parasites. I'm not listing these as root causes because oftentimes they actually appear downstream of the root causes. An example is Candida infections. Candida is an endogenous fungus naturally found within the body in small amounts. Many people do cleanses, and the Candida often reappears down the line, despite rigidly avoiding sugar and processed foods. This tends to happen when Candida is mopping up toxins, oftentimes toxic metals. Another example as to why I do not include microbes and parasites in the category of root causes is because helminths, or worms, often appear when toxins are abundant, and the worms actually balance the different aspects of the immune system. If you look up helminthic therapy, you'll find that worms can actually balance the immune system and in some cases reverse autoimmunity. Yes, in a controlled medical setting, certain helminths are inserted into patients for healing. Please do not try this at home, okay? But this is an example of how, as we've moved away from nature and we've come to fear things like microbes and helminths, and that appears to have disrupted a natural wisdom. A great example of this is, I know multiple cases in which someone has passed a worm and subsequently experienced rapid onset of celiac disease, which is a type of autoimmunity. The worm was holding the immune system in place. Keep in mind that this concept is always case-specific and bioindividuality rules. Killing off what are commonly called parasites can have different outcomes for different people. Some may get sicker, and that sickness might just be because the actual parasite was holding the immune system in place. But some people may actually feel better, and other people may not experience any difference. In any case, modern healthcare, conventional and alternative, is generally ill-equipped to differentiate. But back to the initial idea of why I'm not listing microbes and helminths as root causes. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is another example. In this case, the bacteria comes from one's own body and for various reasons overgrows in regions of the gut where it shouldn't be. This can happen for various reasons, and in most cases, bile flow is inhibited for, again, various reasons, but the bacteria is not the root cause of the condition, which is why the majority of the time the kill approach fails for SIBO, whether you're killing with pharmaceutical antibiotics or natural remedies. And relapse is also so common. We're talking upwards of 60% relapse rate when we just go in and kill the SIBO. So the topic of microbes and parasites becomes a very nuanced and case-specific topic. For some people, what we call a parasite can be a helper, as in the case of helminthic therapy. But in other cases, even when the microbes or parasites are mopping up toxins, they can create their own toxic byproducts, which can create their own burdens on the body. But the reason why they are there when it comes to microbes is not the root cause, and that's the point of this video. And so the gut is a symptom. It is not the root cause. The gut is downstream of root causes. And is it true that when the gut becomes damaged, it can and does compound a lot of other issues? Yes, it absolutely does. This is not to downplay the important role of the gut. This is to put in its place and to correct the narrative that the gut is the root cause. Because if it were, and you were just to work on healing your gut by popping a bunch of supplements to help repair the lining, you can try that. But if all those toxic stressors are still there, it either won't work or you might only experience temporary improvement and run in a hamster wheel because you still haven't addressed the root causes. Yes, it is important to support the gut because we do live in the 21st century where there are a lot of toxic stressors. In fact, it's required living in times that we live in. However, this does not mean that by taking a 6-week course of some supplement, voila, your gut is healed and everything's just fine and dandy. Oftentimes, truly supporting the gut is indirect, supporting detoxification processes beyond just pooping, supporting the liver, supporting bile flow, binding up toxins so they can be removed from the body instead of ending up back in circulation, lowering your stress levels, addressing unprocessed trauma, and putting your feet on the earth, and addressing proper light exposure with a red light device with a special UV lamp. For more little-known myths in modern healthcare, conventional and alternative, plus solutions, check out my video, Myths of Vitamin D, Tests and Supplements.